Most couples only talk about money when there's a problem. There's a bill that's late, credit cards max, tax bills a lot bigger than they thought they were, somebody spent money that they didn't know they weren't supposed to, or they tried to hide it. And by then, talking about it is already too late. What if the same way you planned your date nights, you planned a weekly ritual that would help you build wealth and your trust at the same time? Here's the real issue. When you're only talking about money when there's a problem, you're not making clear decisions. You're talking about it when emotions are high. So instead of actually getting ahead financially, you're just firefighting. And just like if you ignore the check engine light on your vehicle and you don't do proper regular maintenance, then over time, it's going to crash. And if you treat your money the same way, over time, there's going to be long-term consequences where when that check engine light goes off and you're not addressing it or doing the maintenance to keep that check engine light off, your financial situation can take a hit and you'll spend more time trying to fix the problem rather than getting ahead. And it can also affect your relationship. There's studies out there that actually show that couples that talk about their money regularly are more likely to hit their goal, feel more financially secure, and actually have a higher relationship satisfaction. But most couples are stuck in the cycle of not saying anything until there's a problem. Once there's a problem, they fight about the problem, and then afterwards they avoid talking about it again because they don't want to fight about it anymore. The couples who do actually break this cycle check in with each other regularly to talk about their money, their values, and the things that are important for them so that way they can stay on the same track. So the couples who actually break this cycle and are able to get ahead financially and stay on the same page implement money dates. And essentially what a money date is, it's not an intensive budget meeting every single week. It's a focused conversation about your finances before there's actually a problem. So you can think of it as preventative care for your relationship's financial health. So let's go ahead and talk about why they work, how often to have them, and what your first 4 money dates should look like. The reason why money dates work is because they leave you with no surprises. If you're talking about your finances regularly, over time, you're both going to be on the same page about what expenses you have, what the income looks like, how much money you guys can spend, and how much you're dividing between each other. So you're talking about things regularly. So if something were to pop up, you're actually prepared. Rather, if you don't talk about it at all, or you talk about it only when there's a problem, you're still in that firefighting mode. The second reason why they work is it allows you to actually talk about what's important to both of you together and both of you individually. So if you're having these conversations regularly, you're able to talk through some of these things to avoid future fights. You can both know what you both value as a relationship, as a couple that you want for your future. And then you can also know what your partner, what's important to them. So when you're spending money or they're spending money or you're coming to decision mode, you know what's important to you as a couple and you know what's important to you as an individual. And it just really makes decision making a lot easier. And it also makes it so you can talk about what's important to you more often. The last reason why these money dates work is because it helps you with trust and safety. If you only talk about finances when there's a problem or you just don't talk about it at all, there's kind of like a stigma behind it. You probably already anticipate that the conversation is going to go south. But if you're having these conversations weekly, monthly, just on a regular cadence, then it desensitizes you from having the conversation. So you're able to openly share more about what's on your mind, what your thoughts are about certain situations, how you feel about certain situations. So it can make money talks feel less like an attack and more just like an open conversation. So how often should you have these money conversations? Well, I would say that if you're currently not having them at all, you want to do them pretty often, maybe even a couple times for the first few weeks. And then slowly over time, as you're able to navigate these conversations better, because the first few, if you're not currently doing this and you only talk about money when there's a problem, then the first few are probably going to be a little emotionally charged. So you're going to have to work through those first few, and the more often that you have them, the easier it becomes to get through them. But over time, you essentially want to have them less. And how less should you have them? Well, that's going to be coming up between you and your partner and having communication about it. You want to talk through and figure out what cadence works for you both. Maybe it's weekly, maybe it's monthly, maybe it's one of you handling all the finances and just checking in with your partner and sharing what's going on so that way they're on the same page about it. But essentially, if you're starting this, have them more often, and then later on figure out what cadence works for you. Now let's talk about the first 4 money dates that I think every single couple should have. And if you want the worksheet that goes along with this, click the link in the comments. The first money date you should have is setting the stage. And this is essentially desensitizing yourself from having these conversations and just being able to talk, share your feelings, share your thoughts about your mindset around money. If you only talk about money when there's a problem, you're probably going to have to talk through, the confrontational aspect of things before you can have the conversation of being productive on this topic. You also want to set the ground rules, essentially like no kicking, no punching, no shoving, no fighting. Essentially, you want to be able to create a safe space where you can open up and have these conversations and essentially not fight about it. And if things do get confrontational, you want to have a playbook essentially on how you're going to handle those confrontations without them escalating. You're also going to use this money date to decide how often you're going to have them and when they're going to happen. So essentially scheduling them out. And you're also going to want to talk about what's really important to you as a couple. I actually have a couples alignment worksheet that you can download. I'll link the video up here because that video has already gone out at some point, so you can check out the video and download the couples alignment worksheet. But essentially you want to figure out, what are your values as a couple? What's important to both of you? Is it saving up money for your retirement, paying off your house, funding your kids' college? Is it having a frugal lifestyle so that way you can have more time freedom? Is it being able to retire early? You really want to figure out what's important to you as a couple so that way you know where you're putting your money. And it's not a question of whether we should do this. It's more of a question like, how do we make this happen so that we are both in alignment and on the same page? Now, this first money date might actually take a few money dates to get established because there's a lot to work through, especially if you're not having these regularly. So just keep that in mind. I also want to note that during this first money date, you're not actually trying to solve any problems. You're just trying to talk, share, and kind of get on the same page on a macro perspective before you start diving into the actual numbers. The second money date you're going to want to have is a snapshot. This is actually where you're collecting all the information and putting it together on like a spreadsheet or wherever you want to handle that. I actually have a video coming out next week, so make sure to subscribe so that way you can get the spreadsheet that I actually use. So during the snapshot money date, you're really just laying out all that data and you're taking a look at what the situation that you're currently in is, so that way you can start making a plan to move forward. So you're still not making any decisions on this money date. You're just painting the picture of what everything looks like right now. And then the previous money date will help you guide on what to do next. The third money date is actually the budgeting blueprint. So this is where you're going to decide on where your budget's going. And we're not just talking about bills because those are the preset obligations, but you're also talking about allocating your money based on priorities, like what's important to you as a couple. You're going to also want to decide on things like fund money. Are you guys getting a shared budget? Do you have separate checking accounts and a combined checking accounts? You want to make those type of decisions during this money date. Then you also want to agree on short-term goals and long-term goals. And you also want to decide on your roles that you're both playing in your financial snapshot. So is one of you like the quarterback and the other person's the cheerleader, and the quarterback's in the game playing, making the money, handling all the finances, and the cheerleader's there to support? Or is it that you're both in the game and you both have a role that you play? And you can do a combination of things. Maybe one of you is making all the money and the other one of you is the cheerleader, but also has some shared financial responsibilities. So this is part of the money date process of figuring out who's doing what and what your responsibilities are. And then the fourth money date is actually just the first check-in that you're going to be doing with each other, because you've laid out your values, your goals, you know who's doing what, you know what your budget looks like, you know what you're trying to work towards, and you've allocated the budget appropriately. So now you want to do your first check-in and you want to evaluate like what went good, what went bad, and what needs to adjust. And then the reason why you want to have this one intentionally and regularly at first is because you're going to work through a lot of kinks. You're going to set up this budget and talk about all these goals. You're going to go, through a couple weeks and you're going to be like, no, actually this isn't working for us and we want to do this instead, or we want to put more money towards this, or, a pipe burst last week and now, half of our emergency fund's gone. So we need to adjust some things to go forward. But at least you're talking about them regularly. You have that snapshot and then you know what's important to you as a couple. So making these decisions are easier. And when you actually have these money dates and have them on a regular basis, you know what to talk about, how often to talk about it, and you can focus more on decision making and being productive rather than, only talking about it when there's a fight. So hopefully you found that helpful. If you have any questions, just leave them down in the comments below and I'll get to them as soon as I can. And don't forget, I've actually mapped out the first 4 money dates that you're going to have. It's going to cover the exact conversations, the exact cadence that you're going to have them, the exact numbers, and what you're going to talk about inside of that worksheet. So make sure to go into the comments below and download it. Also, don't forget to like this video. It'll really help me out and help push us in the algorithm. And make sure to subscribe for next week's videos, where I'm going to talk about my 3-step process that I help my clients build wealth, get out of debt, and feel financially secure. And also the budgeting spreadsheet that I've personally used for well over 5 years now. All right, see you in the next one.